What's up and how are you, Shape America? And those who are listening, my name is Sean Nevills, CDC COVID-19 Project Director for Shape America. And it's the end of the school year, so we're going to kick off a new series or a quick series of three with administrators in the field. So here, there's perspectives around health and physical education and how they've really battled through the school year and this pandemic we've gone through. So the first person I'd like to bring on for this series is Scott Taylor, principal from Park Brook Elementary in Minnesota. Scott, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having me here.
It is an absolute pleasure. And Scott, go ahead. I'll allow you to give yourself a couple minutes. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yes, well, I'm Scott Taylor, principal of Park Brook Elementary, part of the Osseo area schools in the northwest suburbs of the Twin Cities. This is my 13th year here at Park Brook and my 22nd or 23rd year in the school district. I was a teacher first, special education teacher, working with kids with emotional and behavioral disorders and specific learning disabilities, and also a social studies teacher. Went to school at Northern Arizona University, then my master's from St. Cloud State University.
Awesome. And we have Scott on here. With our outreach with our administrators, obviously we want to really hit on the angle of health and physical education. And Scott, before we get to this amazing program that you put together at your school, tell us some of the things you were seeing in your school and some of that data that kind of led up to this program we're going to talk about.
Yes, well, this is my 13th year here at Park Brook. And when I first came here to Park Brook, we had gone through some major budget cuts as a district. Park Brook, the year before I was here, had 55 suspensions for an elementary school with a school of, at the time, about 360 kids, and behaviors were still out of control. There was some areas where there was some strong academic growth and also areas where there was not as strong of academic growth. So I started looking around the school and thinking, what can I do differently? What can I implement to make a change? And I started to hear about fitness and especially about running and the difference that can make for the students and for transforming a school. So that is how I decided, looking at what was happening and knowing I want to make a change because I believe that the students here deserve the best.
So you looked at those suspension numbers and you thought fitness. So you came out with this amazing program and what you brought to us, the Focus on Fitness Initiative. Tell us about that.
Yes. Yes. Well, we started off by looking at what could we implement. So we started with a morning move program, a before school exercise program. We also have an after school boot camp. We run that several times a year. We started off for the first 5 weeks of school, 2 or 3 days a week after school, over 100 kids outside exercising. Now, kids don't call it exercise, they call it play. But we have fun together. We go outside, we run. If it's raining, we've had to do it inside, but we make it work. So we have different before school, after school fitness classes that we offer. We also have all of our teachers stopping for fitness about every 30 to 45 minutes, where they get the kids up, they do a brain boost to get the kids moving throughout the day.
So it's almost, in our world, we call it the CSAT model, right? So you have a little bit of before and after school, but you also implement things within the school day and you have all of your teachers involved, right? So that's pretty amazing. But in my own personal research here, it's not just about being active, which is the main thing we want. We want the kids to think they're playing when they're actually getting physical activity. But there's more to it, right?
Yes. So with the fitness that we have been doing, we also take the kids on field trips. For example, we start off by in October running the Twin Cities 5K, and which helps build those relationships with the kids because relationships are so important. So we do things such as running the Twin Cities 5K. We also have a cross-country ski program that we partner with an organization here in the Twin Cities, and the kids learn how to cross-country ski, and then we take them on a couple of field trips on weekends to cross-country ski and to go to different events outside during the middle of winter. We also have what we now call a fitness studio here at Park Brook. So students who are struggling, maybe if with focus or with academics, we get the kids into the fitness studio for very specific interventions. It's not because the kid's acting up or having some behaviors at the time, but the idea is that every day at a very specific time before a certain subject, they go to the fitness studio to get some additional movement in, and they do some cardio, heavy lifting, calming, and then back to class.
So let me get this straight. A lot of schools have what they're now trying to call recovery rooms. So you're telling me your recovery room is a fitness studio?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I would call it a recovery room because it's a kid. If a kid is struggling, it's every day at the exact same time they go as an intervention. So if you go into that room, there's some treadmills, spin cycles. There's also a couple of types of weight machines that the kids can use. So really the idea is we want to increase the movement and increase the fitness because there is such strong research that if you increase the movement before learning, you increase academics. And a lot of it comes down to you also decrease negative behaviors when you increase the fitness and the movement.
That's absolutely amazing. I would, if I was at your school, you'd probably have to drag me out of that fitness room because I'd be all over the place. That would be overload for me. But it sounds like it works. I do want to point to a couple other activities and things that you do with your focus on fitness initiative, and that's choir, cooking classes, and art classes. Is that right?
Yes. So while fitness is a big component of what we do, we also try to educate the whole child. So we do have an after-school choir where kids can stay and participate in the choir. We do have cooking classes we've offered at different times. And we also, last year, we started a bucket drumming group. So they have stability balls with buckets, drumsticks. This year with COVID, we weren't able to do that inside, but my music teacher took them outside. And the weather up here in Minnesota was nice enough that we could take them outside to do that. So just a lot of different opportunities, along with an after-school double Dutch team that travels for the American Heart Association.
And all power to that music teacher who does the bucket drumming class. That's a brave person to.
Yes.
So shout out to that music teacher. Quick question, and we'll kind of move it forward back to something you were talking about is going back on, excuse me, I kind of lost my track there. Your physical education and going back to the fitness side of it is how are your PE teachers involved in this initiative?
I have had two different Phi-Ed teachers here. Here in Minnesota, we call it Phi-Ed. I grew up in California. In California, we called it PE. But up here in Minnesota, we call it Phi-Ed. And they have been a big part of the Focus on Fitness initiative. Now, they don't run everything because it really is the whole school and different teachers leading these before school and after school, and then in the classrooms leading the brain boosts. But my Phi-Ed teachers help to organize the morning move, the boot camp, and I also think we have structure because they know how to teach and lead those types of activities. My Phi-Ed teacher, I now buy up so that he can do some interventions as well with extra time during the day to pull kids out if they need some additional movement or fitness. Because I think it's so integral into what we need for our kids who maybe are struggling with behaviors or academically, ways that we can boost some of that for our kids.
And you said it there. It's not just on your phy ed teachers, right? It's the whole.
Right.
It's a model that you have for the whole school, and that's why you offer more than just fitness. You offer cooking and choir and all these other things. But it's a whole school initiative, and really the phy ed teacher just becomes support. So that's absolutely amazing what you're doing there. So the part I wanted to go back on that you touched on is all this is not just to get kids moving, right? It's to increase academic outcomes,
Yes.
behaviors, and things like that. And that talks to a big word that's definitely growing in our field, and that's equity. So tell us more about that.
Yes. Well, Park Brook is a school with, we will be approaching about 75% of our students next year who will be qualifying for free reduced lunches. We've gone somewhere between 85 and 65%, but with the pandemic, our numbers are down just a little bit. But so we do have a high number of students where their families are qualified for the free and reduced lunches. We also have about 30% of our students who are on the continuum of learning English, and probably this year about 90%, and that's probably average, of our students are students of color. And here in Minnesota, we have one of the largest academic gaps in the United States, but it's across the whole United States. But in Minnesota, we have one of the biggest gaps there is. And I look at our students, I think, you know what? I want them to have every opportunity. I want them to have, I guess, every opportunity that's out there. I want to provide them with the best possible education. And I take a look at what's happening in schools, and we can talk a lot about what kids need to do, but how do we change what we're doing so that kids can be successful? So in our classrooms, all of our students, or almost all of our students, sit on stability balls or some type of kinesthetic seating so that they are using their core muscles during the school day, which increases focus. And the students are engaged in the classroom. They are learning. So I look at that whole equity piece because this isn't about just fitness or how can we create athletes or how can we have kids that are in great shape. I want to make sure that students who come here to Park Brook succeed and that they have every opportunity and that they aspire to. Not what I want for them, but what they can achieve and where they can go. So I look at Park Brook and we receive a number of compliments about the behaviors. And we have had several years where we've had no suspensions whatsoever here at Park Brook. And you would think that a school with all these kids on all these bouncy balls, it'd just sort of be out of control. But really, it's a calm environment. There are a few kids who bounce, and if you have a staff meeting, you've got the balls in the media center. There's a few staff members that bounce as well while they're sitting on them. It took some time for some of the teachers to get used to that. I remember one teacher who's now retired. She was wonderful. She embraced it. She said, at first I would get a little seasick watching these kids. Everybody's moving up and down and bouncing. But that sort of falls away. The kids get used to them, so they're not bouncing quite as much. But I look at that whole equity piece, and our academic growth has been some of the top in the district with the growth. So I see that our students who are here are making strong growth, and the students here know what's expected of them. And I also see it teachers, instead of dealing with behaviors. Now, there's always a few behaviors that you have to deal with, but I believe that if you increase that fitness, increase that movement, you decrease a lot of the behaviors so you can deal with the real mental health issues. Teachers also are looking at, the kids are getting a little, excited, or maybe not excited. You want them excited about learning, but a little bit losing their focus, and they get them up for a brain boost. And even some of the kids start to realize we need a brain boost, and they're not trying to get off task, but they can just sense that. One of my first grade teachers, is actually both of them, stopped me one day. He said, Mr. Taylor, we got a question for you, and we're wondering if we could do something. I'm thinking, oh, great. What is it that they want to do? And they said, the afternoon is just rough. It was an immature first grade group. If you look at the research, actually, if first grade boys move more, they actually do better in reading in second and third grade. The whole idea is we want to push them as hard as we can, but the research shows that if you increase movement, later on you increase the reading and math. They said, can we take the kids out for an extra recess? I thought, oh, that's easy. Absolutely. Why not? So they did, because you're trying to work with kids who are at that point where just emotionally they can't do it and physically they can't do it. Take them outside for another recess. You give them what they need and you gain instructional time. I had one of my teachers I was observing, and she was a wonderful teacher. So you wouldn't know who she is because I won't say who she is or what grade she's teaching. But I was doing an observation and started with this great brain boost, had student input with the kids choosing what brain boost to do. And the kids were just engaged. And about 35 minutes into that lesson, all of a sudden I could just watch. The kids weren't being naughty or anything like that. It was just, they were losing focus. And it just sort of went, downhill. Just hanging on, still teaching. So when we were doing our post-observation, I just asked her, I said, could you tell me a little bit about why you didn't stop for another brain boost? And she said, well, you were observing me. I thought I better push through this lesson. And I said, well, in a kind way. I said, you could have gained learning time by giving up some instructional time. So I see that we have changed how we operate, how we function to give kids what they need. So we're really actually increasing the instructional time or that learning time. And a lot of our before and after school programs are focused on how we build those relationships, how we give kids what they need, so our time during the school day can be most beneficial for the kids.
That's
and they also love being here.
That's a pretty strong statement there with the learning time. You're increasing learning time through everything you're doing. That was a pretty amazing journey right there. So tell us then, how, for those listening and watching this, how do you go about just for starting such a program?
Yes, I started off slow. We are, when the program continues to grow. So we started off by doing our before school and after school program. Teachers were really on board with this. I was surprised how many signed up to assist with it. And we learned our before school program, we used to run the whole year. Well, that burns everybody out. So now we run our after school program for about 5 or 6 weeks. Then we run a morning move. Then we do another after school. So we sort of rotate what we're doing, and different staff are involved so that they're not burning out, and they know that, I can sign up for 4 weeks to do this or 5 weeks to do this. This will work. And then we had some trainers come in who worked with the staff about how to incorporate instruction, more active instruction. So the teachers were able to learn about this, and we also started increasing the brain boosts and realizing brain boosts don't have to be tied directly to your academic goal. It can simply be jumping jacks, movement, some dancing, whatever it might be. But the teachers started to learn how they could include that. I then decided I want to include the kinesthetic seating, the stability balls in the classrooms. And I asked teachers who was interested in using them. And So a few teachers said, well, right now I'm not too interested in it. I said, that's okay. One teacher said, Scott, I really respect you. If you want me to, I will. I said, no, it's a choice. I said, I actually don't know if I have enough money right now to do so. So she didn't want them that year. A year later, she came to me and she said, I'm ready. I want them. And so she has them, and she says she wouldn't go back to teaching without them. So that is now the standard here at Park Brook. But I allowed some of it to be organic and allowed them to sort of play around with what works. So it wasn't just, this is what everybody will do and implement, because it is a different way of teaching and a different way of being and having the kids up and moving so much. But I also have a teacher now who's retiring. This is her last year after 34 years in our district. And a few years back, she said, Scott, I don't think I've ever had as much fun with students as I'm having now. So it's just changed that whole relationship. We have brought in another trainer. I'm going to be bringing another trainer for this coming school year to help us with learning more about interventions and how to use some interventions for math and reading. He has developed some that are very active. So it's a process, and I'm realizing I have a few new staff members coming. We have very low turnover in this building with staff, but I also know that I have to bring on board some of these newer staff members so that they can see what we are doing, understand why. Because it's not about just getting out the wiggles, but it's really about preparing the kids for learning.
Absolutely amazing. And I do want to point out, since we're on the kind of the back end of our conversation here, that in 2013, Park Brook was named a celebration school by the Minnesota Department of Education.
Yes, thank you.
Well earned, and sounds like everything that you have going on with your Focus on Fitness initiative has just been a driver to your success. And like you said, it just essentially the why is for academic outcomes, and then also to create better students after they leave your school. So before I
Yeah.
let you go, Scott, any last words for our audience?
The only thing I would say is that I never set out to be a principal that would focus on fitness. When I went through and worked on my licensure program, if you would have asked me what would be a successful school, I would have talked about an orderly school, a school where you walk down the hallway, the students are engaged and learning in their classrooms. But I realized I completely changed my whole line of thinking with that. I do want kids learning. I do want them following directions, but I want them engaged in a different way. So if I was to walk down the hall today, I'm looking to see our kids moving as well. And we're also now working to try to get the kids to take more ownership of that. So in our planners, instead of just having goals for math and reading, they also have individual goals for their mile run, for push-ups, and for sit-ups, because we want to have the kids start to take ownership of that.
Sounds great. And you talked about fitness assessment right there. That's a whole nother conversation. But
Yes,
thank you, Scott, so much. Scott Taylor, principal from Park Brook Elementary in Minnesota. Thank you so much.
you're very welcome.